this is not a drill. Atlanta, this is not a bad dream. As citizens, this is the test of our lifetime. So tell me, Atlanta, are you ready to fight?
Democratic U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff had a rally in Atlanta, Georgia this weekend. He held that rally with his fellow Georgia U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. A crowd of 2,000 very enthusiastic Georgia residents showed up. Senator Ossoff said at that rally, President Trump was, quote, trying to poison our democracy with fear and intimidation. He declared, Georgia will bow to no king. That was Jon Ossoff's weekend in Georgia, and this was Jon Ossoff's workday today in Washington as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
So, Director Ratcliffe, you were a member of the Houthi PC small group signal chain, correct?
I was.
The discussion included the Vice President's private opinion on the wisdom of proposed U.S. strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
It included the private opinions of the Secretary of Defense on the timing of strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
Director Ratcliffe, surely you prepared for this hearing today. You were part of a group of principals, senior echelons of the U.S. government, in now a widely publicized breach of sensitive information. You don't recall whether the Vice President opined on the wisdom of the strikes? That's your testimony today under oath?
In that setting, I don't recall.
Director Ratcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
A national...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director Ratcliffe, I asked you a yes or no question, and now you hold on. A national political reporter
you can characterize it how you want.
Was made privy to sensitive information about imminent military operations against a foreign terrorist organization.
Mistake of adding a reporter,
and that wasn't a huge mistake. That wasn't a huge mistake.
Well, they characterize
this
it
as
as
an embarrassment.
Joining us now is Senator Jon Ossoff of the great state of Georgia. Senator, sir, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. Great to see you.
Let me get your reaction to what you heard today from John Ratcliffe and from the other intelligence officials at this hearing today. That was obviously a very sharp exchange between you and the CIA director, but what was your take overall on his testimony? What else you heard today?
Unacceptable and unconvincing. And the key point here is that this kind of disclosure and the use of unclassified devices and systems to discuss the timing of imminent U.S. airstrikes puts American flight crews at risk because it risks the disclosure. And in this case, there was the improper disclosure of information about when U.S. forces would be entering hostile airspace. And that kind of information in the possession of an enemy provides them with an opportunity to better target our air crews. This was reckless, it was amateurish, and it put American lives at risk.
Do you think that people who were involved in this group text over Signal should resign or be fired?
The National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense, based upon Mr. Goldberg's reporting of his inclusion in this chat of specific information related to these air-to-ground operations in Yemen, have breached their basic obligations to protect American national security and American lives, and they should resign.
The line from Trump's intelligence officials, if I could sum it up in terms of the way they've responded to this, is that they're basically asserting there was no classified information in this chat. It seems like they think that kind of ends the conversation. I'm a layman to these things. I don't know anything about what amounts to classified information or not, but just as an informed news consumer, it seems to me that it's unlikely that none of this information would be considered classified information. it certainly seems likely to me that it would be at the least considered to be non-public sensitive national security information. And I know there are legal implications for classified information and for sensitive national security information in terms of how those things are handled. Is it possible that this discussion that they entered into over this commercial app, not even knowing who all was in the chat that they were all participating in, is it possible that this was criminal?
It is possible. Now, the Department of Defense manual specifies that information about substantial war plans must be classified as secret. But look, putting aside the question of whether this information was formally classified, it included information about a disagreement between the vice president and the president over the timing of airstrikes. It included detailed information about when the United States was contemplating taking these airstrikes in Yemen. And that is exactly the kind of information that a foreign adversary or a hostile foreign intelligence service is aggressively seeking. And it's the kind of information that puts U.S. military personnel at risk when they go out to conduct these operations, and those plans and that timing have been improperly disclosed.
So you held this rally in Atlanta this weekend, 2,000 people there. That's a lot of people, especially when there isn't some election on the horizon that everybody's there turning out for. We played that sound at the top, asking the crowd if they're ready to fight. They sounded very, very ready. We have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans showing up at rallies and town halls. They're starting to be the first large-scale events like the one that you and your fellow Georgia Senator Senator Warnock held this weekend. What are you hearing from your constituents? What is when you're talking about that fight with your constituents, what does that look like to you? What are people asking to? And what do you think your constituents should be doing right now to stand up to what the Trump administration is doing?
There is extraordinary opposition energy right now. Outrage at the president's power grab, his attack on the Constitution and the rule of law, his efforts to use fear and intimidation and the power of government to crush the opposition. That's something we've never seen in American politics before. The open door for corruption and the total disregard for anything that ordinary people care about. You know, he's down at his palace in Florida talking about invading Greenland. What does that do for people who are concerned about affording health care or child care? Nothing. So this extraordinary energy, first of all, puts pressure on Republicans in Congress who have very narrow margins to pass their legislative agenda. When they see that the sleeping giant has been awakened and that there is so much popular opposition to this administration, that helps us in the immediate term to defeat their legislative agenda. And it's also what we will have to channel next year to win a landslide victory in 2026. The only path out of this spiral toward one-man rule is to regain power in Congress. And I am the only Democrat running for re-election in a state that Donald Trump won. This will be the biggest Senate race of 2026. And if folks want to help me, they can find out more at electjohn.com.
Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia. Sir, thank you very much for your time. I know today was a long day and this is a busy time. I appreciate you taking time out to be here with us.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'll be right back. Stay with us.